Hi guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people, their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Jeremy.
Hello, hi.
Hi. So Jeremy, he's currently a language teacher at UQ teaching French.
That's right.
Yep, and then I thought we might first start getting some context about Jeremy growing up. So Jeremy, in high school, what kind of kid were you? How would they sort of describe Jeremy?
High school, I loved my high school years. Yeah, I had a really good time, great friends, spent a lot of time outside, lots of sports. Didn't really enjoy the studies too much. I did what I had to, like I think a lot of people, just to get through. And I wasn't really a super academic kid. I studied because I needed to. And as soon as I got the opportunity, I was outside kicking a ball or playing cricket with everyone, so
Yeah, that's cool. And so when you were in high school, what kind of career did you sort of envision for yourself, if you thought about one?
I didn't think at all. The only thing I was focused on in high school was my gap year. And all I wanted to do was, get out of here, go travelling. And I did. I ended up taking 2 gap years. So, my career's thoughts in high school, there was almost zero thought, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm curious about those 2 gap years. What did you do?
So obviously, being French, I went back to France for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And just travelled around, sometimes by myself, sometimes with friends. And I suppose one of the most meaningful things was going to Canada for a ski trip.
And why was it meaningful?
Just it was a whole nother experience that I've grown up knowing Europe pretty well, France, obviously Australia, and Canada was something out of a storybook for me, seeing the nature, the animals, all those things that you only see in picture books growing up. So for me it was really eye-opening and really enchanting, a really amazing place. And they've got French as well, so there was this whole fascination with the culture over there. It's bilingual, which is sort of my upbringing. So it was really really good place. And after I went the first time, I went back over and over again. And so Canada's been quite a special place.
Yeah, the beginning of everything.
Yeah, kinda, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And just wondering, so you were born in France, so when did you come to Australia?
The first time I came here, I was 6 months old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I've been back and forth ever since. So exactly half my family's French, exactly half is Australian.
That's so cool.
And I did French schooling, and I've got, as we say in French, to put it politely, I'm sitting between 2 chairs.
We have a very impolite way for saying that for Australian-born Chinese, which is banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. Yeah. So between 2 chairs, I'll take that.
Yeah, the French expression is a little bit cruder, but
let's hear it.
It's le cul entre deux chaises. It's the ass between 2 chairs.
A little bit visual. Yeah. Wait, so you came 6 months, and then so you did your high school in Australia? Was
high school was done here. Yeah, a little bit of primary school in France, and all of high school in Australia. The first part of which, the sort of junior high, I guess, was at a bilingual school, French school. So.
Wait, so you spoke French at your high school?
Yeah, so maths, geography, history, biology, physics, chemistry, and French were all in French. And then language 3, English, sports, and all the electives were in English.
Can I ask which high school was that?
Talopi Park High, it's in Canberra. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So would you say that French is your native language, or is English your native language?
Both.
Wow.
Yeah. Both, yeah.
You spoke French first, then you came here and you spoke English for a very long duration.
I've always spoken both. My father's Australian and my mum's French, so at home she would always speak to me and my sister in French, and my dad would speak to us in English, and to the point where if we were in Australia, I would sometimes find English came a bit faster because I was in the playground with English all the time. I'd go home and I'd try to speak English with my mum.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, Mum, I'm hungry. And she'd just look at,
Yeah.
Look around.
What?
It was like I was talking to the wall, and I could have said it 27 times.
Yeah.
The second I said, "Maman, j'ai faim," I'm hungry. Like in
Yeah.
French, I'm hungry. Straight away, she'd be like, "Oh, you're hungry? Yeah, no worries. So you want, something, something to
Launches
eat?"
into mum action.
Yeah. So she was really smart about that. So she never like specifically said, "No, you have to speak French." She just basically ignored me when I speak English. So it was really effective.
Oh, that's so smart. I wonder if she did that on purpose.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, and because I thought it was interesting that you decided to, I guess, go to school where it predominantly spoke everything in French. So, like in my mind, I was thinking that maybe French is like the weaker of the two languages. So you decided to do French, but I guess was that just like a random choice, or don't really know?
So the school's Tilapia Park is sanctioned by the French government. So it's a French public school as well as an Australian public school. So it's the teachers that get sent there to do French are all from France. They're all like French. It's like state, like in Australia, you've got a teacher that works for the state. Yeah. It's the same. They send them out there to go and teach at that school. So it's perfect bilingual school. Yeah. So my education was bilingual. It wasn't a choice to do one or the other. It was like
the whole school taught French.
That school was the reason. Oh, the school being in Canberra was the reason we went to Canberra in the first place, because I could do that side-by-side education.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But then I saw that you did into, was it sports sciences or coaching sciences?
Yeah, so going back to your question about high school, because I was such a bad student, or such a, not a bad student, I got good grades, but I just didn't really care. And in grade 12, I kind of put all my eggs in one basket, right? Yeah. Because I knew I was a dumb kid, but I was smart enough to know that I needed to get into university at the minimum, right? Yeah. So I put all my eggs in one basket, and I chose to do human biology in grade 12. Okay. And so I did this sort of major in 1 year, and I actually really enjoyed it. And so that was kind of a turning point, because I sort of found something that I could, live with studying. So when I got back from the gap years, I enrolled in like human biology, and that sort of moved into sports science, and a couple of other things at uni. So that was, thanks to grade 12, that interest sort of carried through into my undergrad.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, because you said you were a pretty sporty kid growing up, and then
I love sport. I adore sport, or I follow heaps of different ones, and
still to this day.
Yeah, unfortunately I don't have as much time to play anymore, but I adore sport. It's
and
one of
when
my
you say
passions.
sports, like which sports in particular?
Team sports,
Basketball, AFL?
Yeah, sure. Basketball, AFL, ice hockey, cricket, football, rugby league, you name it.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. But then after completing your degree, that's how you got into languages. So how did that happen? So
in my undergrad, the first year, I had a bunch of friends who they were going to do Spanish. It was an elective. Yeah. And at the time, I had an elective slot in first year. So I was like, let's all do Spanish together. That sounds like great fun. And one of those friends had organised for an end of year trip to go to South America. And I love travelling and everything. So I went along, right? And after that year of beginner Spanish, we actually had a fantastic time in South America, because we had that beginner level of being able to break the ice and understand a little bit what's going on, order food and kind of chat with locals and stuff. And so when I got back and I changed into a double degree program at uni, I lost the elective, because the double degree is obviously really busy.
Yeah. Wait, so your degree was sports sciences?
It was originally human biology.
Oh yeah, human biology.
And then I had the grades to get into a double degree, which included sort of management and business and that kind of thing. So it was sports science plus like a business degree, like a sports management kind of thing.
Do you know which business? Because there's like accounting, there's
sports, all sports, yeah.
Oh, so like sports was under business.
Yeah, so like sports management, business, marketing, all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
And so because I had lost my elective, my chance to do an elective, I kind of spoke with the course conveners and everything in Spanish, and they said you should really continue. You can add it onto your program by doing an extra year, and you get a diploma of languages. And that was the first I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah.
And so I thought, yeah, that sounds great. I really love, learning this other language. So I stuck with it. And so at the end of my undergrad, I had the double bachelor, and I had the Spanish diploma as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And I guess like when you first Spanish one elective, how much did you actually really learn? Did you go like from a zero to actually being able to have basic convo?
Yeah. So the double degree is 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Add an extra year onto that, so my undergrad was 5.
Yeah.
So I did Spanish as 1 unit per semester for 5 years. So yeah, by the end of it, I was at a pretty good level. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. And was it like when you first started to speak Spanish, what was it about that actually made you want to take it seriously? Like some people, they do an elective and they're like, oh, happy days, woohoo, I can speak 2 words, and then. It
was really the motivation from my friends. Like they had enrolled to learn Spanish initially, and it was like, let's get around it. Let's all do Spanish together.
Major.
No, as their elective as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that my friend had organised this trip to South America during the summer, at the end of my first year, that was like a real motivation to do well in that first year. And then going over there and realising, how much of an effect it has to learn another language, and how, you can kind of experience a culture on another level, and, it's a whole other way of going to another country when you can speak the language. That was a super motivation, that was. Yeah, it was. It really pushed me to just continue and get even better, because after 1 year you don't know a huge amount, right?
Yeah.
But it was enough to realise how much I needed to know to sort of communicate better, and that was the motivation to continue. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So after Spanish, and you finished your degree, and then what happened?
After that, I had a really good hospitality career. I've always worked in sort of the higher end restaurants, and I did an apprenticeship for service and stuff like that. So that was a really good way to see the world. You can work in hospitality everywhere in the world, right? And it's got the flexibility to allow you to travel and enjoy my youth basically. So I've done that for pretty much always until a few years ago, so 2017, I decided, I need to maybe change careers now.
Why is that?
Just, I don't know, just, I guess, maturing. It's time to settle down. My love for travel hasn't gone away. I still travel when I can. Obviously, COVID's put a bit of a dampener on that, but I thought, I should really consider doing a postgrad and maybe taking my career in another direction. And so I found the Applied Linguistics Masters here at UQ.
Oh,
and
nice.
Side by side, because of my experience with my undergrad, I decided to do the same thing again and do a language diploma at the same time. And so I did Italian with Griffith University. And
Yeah, and how did you choose Italian out of everything?
Italian.
Come on, Chinese!
Yeah, I did 1 year of Chinese actually. I did first year. So that's definitely on the to be continued list. Definitely, and I focused on Italian because I had enrolled in this language diploma at Griffith University, and I was doing Italian and Chinese side by side. And it wasn't until the end of the first year that I got the advice that to complete the language diploma, everything needed to be in the same language. All the credit points have to be in the same language. And because my wife is Italian,
Makes sense.
Seemed logical to pursue that one.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But I want to go back one tiny step to the hospitality. How many years did you work in hospitality for?
Oh, since the age of 17. And I'm still going, so that's.
Whoa! Oh yeah, you're still working right now.
I don't think I'll ever leave it. it's an industry that's as old as humanity, and you know, it's something that, yeah, it's really rewarding. So it's been, what am I, 35, so 18 years, half my life.
Yeah, wow. And what do you love like about hospitality? I mean, like I've worked in it and I have some like horror stories. But
there's always horror stories. Yeah, no, of course. For me, so I've always done front of house, right?
You're the cashier, you meet the customer.
So I was trained, the apprenticeship I did was for like fine dining front of house.
Ooh.
So,
and was that straight after high school in your gap year, or when did that occur?
It was during my undergrad that I completed the apprenticeship.
Ooh.
Yeah, I did it because I was always working during uni.
Was it a long apprenticeship, like a year, 2 years?
I think the certification takes a year.
Yeah.
But I guess there's a minimum requirement. There's a few steps you've got to, a few hoops you need to jump through before you can start, I think.
Yeah.
And you need to be in a place that'll back you, sort of. So the restaurant I was working in at the time sort of sponsored me, I guess.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So back to your question, there's something about it. There's something. I always tell the same story when you give someone their food, right?
Yeah.
There's this real sort of primal human emotion moments, and it only lasts like a second, right? And you give everyone their food, and it's like on the pyramid of needs, you know, the psychological pyramid of needs, where you need air first, and then you need so on and so forth, and then it goes down to like love and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's on there somewhere where everyone's got the food in front of them, and everyone looks around, and everyone's in good company because they've obviously chosen to be with those people at dinner. And they're in a safe space, they've got a roof over their head, they're warm or whatever, and there's this split second where everyone looks at each other, and it's that bon appetit moment.
Yeah.
And it's priceless. Like, I'm getting, my hairs are standing up just talking about it. And there's this really, really like human, raw emotion that lasts a split second, but it happens every time. And it's that second where people have the food, they know they're about to eat, they're safe, and everyone's with them, and everyone's ready to kind of enjoy that time together. And I really, that's kind of what I live for. When I do that, it's really, it's rewarding. Yeah, I don't know, I like it.
Yeah, and how does it because as you said, it's only like for a split second, but then dealing with customer complaints and maybe doing the dirty stuff. Like, how do you sort of balance out that?
I think that's just life, though. I mean, every day, every second, whether you're working or not, there's always, a good and a bad.
Yeah.
There's always, even just driving somewhere, you're gonna find someone who's, driving a bit silly or whatever. There's always, pluses and minuses for everything. So it's just it's just an outlook on life, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But after 18, 17 years, surely you must be a little bit sick of it, no?
Well, I mean, I've got some stories, that's for sure.
Oh, please, you want to share a few?
There's just some of the things that people do, it never ceases to amaze you, Like, you think you've seen everything, or you think you've seen a lot, and then every week there's something else, and you're like, wow, I didn't expect that. Yeah.
Tell us the story.
Oh, I don't know. They probably sound silly when you talk about them, but there's always funny things that people do and you don't expect, right? So I feel like food is such an important part of life, especially in French culture, that there are things that sort of go without saying, I suppose. And sometimes you see people do things that are against that, and you don't understand how they can possibly have it in their head to do such a thing. Like, one of my pet hates was when you have the cloth napkin. Yeah. Right? So you've got this beautifully ironed linen napkin that the waiter puts on your lap. Yeah. Right? And for some reason or another, that whether they think about it or not, some people, when they finish their meal, they pick up the napkin off their lap and they just dump it into the sauce of their plate. Gross. And every single time that would just like rub me up the wrong way. I'm like, what? Why? Why would you do that?
It's kind of interesting. It almost has the equivalent of an actual tissue. You just chuck your tissue into all your junk into the same bowl.
Well, that's fine, right? Because the tissue gets thrown out.
Yeah, but the napkin doesn't.
Exactly. Anyway.
So let's wait for this truck.
Yeah, there's a big tractor coming past.
Yeah, unfortunately we have a spot on the balcony, so sad for yeah, for the noise. But okay, cool. And then so after doing Italian and linguistics, what kind of things did you sort of like learn in linguistics? Like you know a little bit, like you know French, you know what was the other one? Spanish. And then so what kind of did linguistics like do for you? And yeah.
The linguistics, so it was heavily focused on like language acquisition, right? So second language or foreign language or just language acquisition in general. So how does someone learn a language? What are the processes that are behind acquiring a new language or even your first language, right? So that was probably the main focus of the course. There was a lot on TESOL. I chose to do teaching English as a second language. Teaching English to speakers of other languages is what TESOL means. So there was a bit of focus on that. But what I really enjoyed the most was the raw sort of science of linguistics. Like so I guess the easiest way to illustrate that is like the phonetic alphabet, the international phonetic alphabet, right? And where you can transcribe any language in the world with,
yeah, the kind of, I've never learnt it before.
So it looks like the Latin alphabet for the most part, but there are other symbols and like squiggles and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that kind of scientific approach, that raw linguistics, like breaking down all the parts of the language, the morphology, the syntax, all the grammar, what every word means, and breaking them down. And I really liked that part. And I suppose they're the three parts that, from my understanding. You've got the raw structure of the language, then you've got how you acquire a language, and then you've got learning a language itself. So, I did all those three things, and they all appealed to me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Did you find it a bit too theoretical at times?
Sometimes it gets pretty deep for the second language acquisition, because you have to understand the theories in the past to understand theories in the present, if that makes sense. So
see where it came
so
from,
you're kind of learning about things that have become obsolete almost, and that can get tedious if you're a student who's got an assignment due and you've got to do all this reading and
you've got to cram it.
But it's definitely very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you think that learning linguistics helps you pick up like your second language, third language?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it gives you more of a perspective, I suppose, it's like a blueprint almost of what a language is, and you can kind of build it back up again. So yeah, it definitely helps, but nothing like practice.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. But I think it's pretty cool how you structured your degree, where you did linguistics, like heavy theory, and then you also had like a really practical one where it's like Italian, and they like combine together. When you're sick of one, you jump to the other.
Yeah, and it was a good way to sort of keep it grounded. Like you say, sometimes the theory could get quite heavy, and so you'd go to Italian class and you'd sort of watch what the teacher was doing and the lesson plan and the curriculum, and you're like, okay, like this is what I've just learnt about this in curriculum design or whatever, and you can kind of see it from the other side. So yeah,
that's pretty cool. And then so after you finished the masters, and then what happened next?
So at the end of the diploma for Italian with Griffith, they really encourage you to do like will projects.
Oh yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
So work integrated learning and or like exchanges, basically. So they've got one called it's called GAP. So it's I think it's Griffith Assisted. I can't remember the acronym. Sorry.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's an exchange program. So they encourage you to go overseas. So in my case, it was going to Italy.
Yeah.
And you kind of do a work integrated learning, but in another country. Oh. So I did one here before I left with the Dante Alighieri Society, and then I did two in Italy.
Wow.
And the second one, incidentally, was the translation one, and then that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Damn. And when
Yeah.
you say you did 2 in Italy, so are you talking about 2 years, like, or is it like
Two different wheel projects.
Oh, and is a wheel project like like a semester long, or?
Yeah, so the entirety is a trimester. They have trimesters at Griffith.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess, about 4 months.
Yeah.
So I did 4 months in Italy, 2 months of one project and 2 months of another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
More or less.
cool. Tell me more about that translation project.
So I actually piloted this project for Griffith to see if we could get it up and running for other students.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, COVID's hit since, and I'm not sure if, well, I'm sure that no one's been back since, but hopefully, the inroads we made with that place are going to be fruitful for other students of Italian. But anyhow, it was a museum.
Ooh, okay.
So an Italian museum, they did ceramics mostly, like a ceramics museum, in a place called Faenza. And there's a place there, they've got an international ceramics museum there, and there's another one which is the old workshops of a really famous ceramics artist called Carlo Zalli. And I worked for that museum and helped to translate all their content into English.
Ooh, that's really cool. And so when you're working, so what's like the, I guess, setting? Is it like, you know, like you're in a group of like 5, and then, you know, one person translates one part and then you check it, or how does it work?
So I was working alone for the translations. I had,
Oh my gosh.
you know, I had people supporting me.
Yeah.
I had like an IT specialist and the lady that would do the reception, and another one that knew all the like resources and everything of the museum. My first task was to do the website.
Oh, okay.
And so it was kind of, I mean, I didn't really need a huge amount of help because it's, you know, you just go page by page, paragraph by paragraph.
Yeah.
And because I was a wheel student, you know, I'm not getting
Paid,
you know, so
Yeah.
I think it was in everyone's benefit that I was the only one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. But I guess, I think one of my biggest concerns is if I'm doing this translation project by myself, I would second guess myself. So I guess how do you like them, like, you know, they know that, you know, you're a student. How do they, I guess, have enough trust that you're doing the right thing?
So because it was a wheel project, I still had sort of supervision from Griffith University, I guess.
Okay, that's cool.
So I was always able to reach out to my lecturers and tutors and say, you know, is this how you understand this? And they were super willing to help. So, and thanks to that, the museum directors were confident that, you know, it would be done properly, I suppose, because it was always going through the Italian department at Griffith University. So it was kind of in their name, right, that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I was a work integrated learning student through Griffith, so, you know, I'm representing the Griffith University by doing this. So it was all
like, double checked.
Double checked, and
assured.
they wanted to make sure that I did a good job, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, I did a good job, and so it was everyone wanting the work to be done correctly. So there was no issue with that.
Yeah, that's cool. And then if we get into the meat of it, so how does one translate information of, like, you know, from ceramics, like historical artifacts? Where is your go-to in the process? I guess research probs. Yeah,
lots of research, because there was a lot of things I didn't know, that's for sure.
Tell me some interesting facts.
Well, so just silly things like, you know, there'd be all these words that would reoccur, like zolle or something like that, which is a lump of clay. But it doesn't translate as like, a lump is kind of a, you know, not a very...
Attractive?
Yeah, not an attractive word, right? So lots of technical words that I would never have thought about using in Italian, except that in the context of ceramics it's super important, because to get a ceramic you've got to get like the raw materials from the earth and then shape it and cook it, and so you've got all these technical terms, the kiln and the lumps of clay and the different glazings that they use and all this stuff. So it was definitely a big learning curve. But honestly, for the legwork, and I don't know if this will be a question later, but
Yeah.
the legwork of the translations, I used machine translation.
Ooh, yeah.
And I would get the kind of framework, and then
Yeah.
I'd just go pick through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure, everything was kind of not Google Translate-y.
Yeah, yeah. Fair enough. And when you say machine translator, are we talking about plug it into Google Translate, or are we talking about CAT translation?
I used a lot of different ones because they always give you different results. So
Yeah.
at the time I was using Reverso context a lot
Ooh,
because I found that one to be really useful for my personal assignments and everything like that in Italian. So I based myself on Reverso. I had a subscription where
you paid for it.
they do the the documents and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was able to use that and then go through it, and then I used things like word reference, dictionaries like Treccani, which is the Italian dictionary, just the Oxford English Dictionary sometimes I needed, and word reference was a big one, and Google Translate not so much. It's too like robotic almost. Yeah.
So Reverso, is it like where you can plug in the whole text and then get the whole thing spat out, or?
Yeah, you can do that. You can. It gives you, for me, that didn't work for me because it was a bit overwhelming to have huge chunks of text translated. So I would tend to break it down into like sentences or paragraphs. And on a website, you've got lots of different pages everywhere. So you don't really have one huge, 5,000 word, running article or something like that to translate. It's kind of snippets everywhere. So I would generally translate. I'd punch it into Reverso, get the context, and then I'd have to go and adjust syntax or a couple of words that didn't match. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's quite interesting. And I guess probably for your work, does it require you to read everything thoroughly and then start translating, or can you just start translating straight away?
So that was my first experience translating. So I read everything thoroughly for sure.
Oh, so you read the whole text before you started?
Yeah, because I wanted to. So because it was in Italian, I wasn't sure what it was going to be about, or if there were going to be words I didn't know. So I wanted to make sure I knew everything. I wanted to know the text before I translated anything, not just start. If you start translating from the first word, you may miss context, or you don't know what's coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me it was important because I was an Italian student to sort of get across what it meant first in Italian and then translate it into English. Yeah.
True. Can I ask how many times you read it before doing it, if you remember?
I must have read the entire website, front to back. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to count. Probably more times than I've got fingers, that's for sure.
Oh!
Yeah, overall,
exciting.
But by the time I finished the entire, project, I would have read everything at least a dozen times, probably.
That's pretty good, because I know that for the current project, because he's teaching French will translation, and I'm also doing one in Chinese, and then we're translating this small story. I don't know how many words, but it's quite short. And then they say that the rule of thumb, at least read it 5 times.
Yes.
But this is literature, and yours is, I guess, a little bit more facts based.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're translating, did you find that Reverso it was pretty accurate, or?
It's not too bad. Generally, I've been using Reverso, word reference, those sorts of tools for a while, just for the language diplomas and things like that.
Yeah.
And I find something like a word reference is good if you just want one word.
Yeah.
And you can get a bunch of synonyms, you can get the meaning. Reverso is good if you've got a tiny, two words or more. But I generally don't like to punch in a massive amount of text.
Yeah.
So, Reverso is good, but for me it was more trying to get the gist of an expression. So 2 or 3 words together, or a half a sentence, that would work well. But beyond that, Reverso works by trying to match it to other texts that it's got in its database. So if you've got too long a sentence, it doesn't really get the whole context sometimes. It'll it'll translate snippets together, if that makes sense. It'll still give you everything,
Yeah.
but it'll translate snippets together, and sometimes it'll miss the link between ideas in the paragraph.
So like almost like translating phrases like in isolation of one another.
Yeah, I think it's a really useful tool for, phrases, expressions. So, like in English, if you've got a couple of like in our story, you know, that we use for Will, there'll be things like there's that scene where they're talking about the people that know about this story, and they'll only whisper it to each other over wine late at night.
Yeah.
And you know, if you translate directly over wine, for example, you're going to literally get over wine, and it makes no sense in another context, like or in another language. So those sorts of things where you can say like over a drink, or over a dinner, or over time. And you can put that into reverse, and it'll give you ideas of how that can be translated. But if you give them that sentence, like say you put that sentence in Google Translate, it's literally going to give you over, as in jumping over.
The top.
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting, because I thought that if you had the whole sentence, like they were like talking over wine, Google Translate would be able to translate that well. But if you just were to have over wine, you have the more like jumping over the
literal
line,
translation.
right? So wouldn't you need to have like the whole sentence, so you give context to?
Yeah, you do need the whole sentence, and that's what I was saying at the start with the machine translation. I would punch in the entire. I'd have the entire document done.
Oh yeah.
And then I would go through like with a fine-tooth comb, and all the all the expressions, I'd put those back in, sort of in isolation, and then if it was one word alone, you could use heaps of different resources. I tended to stay away from Google Translate. I just always had a bad personal experience with them. You know, you see those like horror. It was always menus for some reason.
And,
you know, I've worked with so many menus in my life, and you can see the ones that are Google translated.
Damn, that sucks, because Google Translate is ashamedly my go-to, because it has the small Chinese pinyin with it, so it's great for me when I'm trying to read it as well. Okay, fair enough. And then like if you were to talk, I guess, a little bit about your own sort of, so just to double check, this is probably like the only translation internship you've done?
Yep. So I was fortunate after I finished with the museum with the internship that I kept a good relationship with them, and I continued to do things for them. So outside of the internet, we did the website. We did sort of live conferences, or
you did interpreting?
Sort of, not really live interpreting, but you know, we'd have like a press conference or something, and I'd go with the director and, you know, make sure that everything he wanted to say was. It's like he'd give me a scrap of paper and say, all right, you know, is this good, and how do I say this in English or whatever.
Oh wait, so you were teaching him English, not translating, like interpreting for him?
I'd be translating his Italian, but I'd prepare him before he actually spoke. So it wasn't live interpreting, it was sort of giving him, he'd give me like a piece of paper of like, all right, I want to say this in English, how do I say that? And he'd have a rough idea, like his English was okay, and I'd say, no, don't say that, say it like this, you know, use this word instead, or whatever.
Wait, so he spoke Italian and then you spoke the English, or he spoke the English, but he already had you proofreading beforehand?
Yes, the latter.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So there was a few things like that, like, and then press releases as well, and what else we do? We did like inaugurations of art events and things like that. Bits and pieces, like all the kind of stuff that museums do, I suppose.
Yeah, like putting like on the wall the words and stuff like that.
Newspaper articles and book entries. I did a couple of book entries that were written by the staff, or whatever you call them, of the museum. So they have like an entry in a book, a chapter. So I did a couple of those as well.
Was it story? Was it fiction or?
No, it was non-fiction. It was about the artist and his career, and
that's kind of cool. And in general, how would you sort of, I guess, describe your translation style? Would you say you're more like, you know, foreigner, like free, like what is it, literal translation, free flow translation? Would you more, I guess, be about, you know, getting the gist of the meaning, or would you be more about sort of being precise in like sort of delivering it almost like the way it was given to you?
It's a good question, because at the start I thought I would be about making sure the meaning was right.
Yeah.
Just if it means the same thing more or less, the actual choice of words or the choice of syntax. Syntax is not something that you can always translate, but sometimes the choice of syntax does have an effect on the meaning. And so initially I didn't really care too much about that, as long as the gist of it was correct. But since we've been doing this project with the Australian short story, I've been really quite nitpicky over what the author's been saying, and it's something that I've discussed over and again with my students, is what do you think why did the author put the word only in that part of the sentence and not in another part, even though it works everywhere, but why did you choose to put it there, and what do you want that to reflect in the translation? So I think maybe the difference is that literature is, there's more of a focus on the choice of words from the author maybe, whereas non-fiction isn't as much necessarily, potentially. A non-fiction, especially for a museum where it's descriptions, it's just, they just want you to know the information about the artist. There's dates, there's, you know, his travels, his projects, his ambitions and stuff. But it doesn't matter which way you give them that information.
Yeah.
Whereas an author who's writing a story is, you know, the story's really up in his head, and the words that he chooses or she chooses to use to express their story has an impact, you know, on the way that you kind of imagine the story. Yeah.
That's interesting. So would you say that literature is definitely a lot more harder to translate than non-fiction?
It has been, yeah, because I think, well, personally, I believe you need to take that more into account. You need to try to keep it as much as, well, I think so. There's probably people that don't do that. But for a literary piece, I'd be more inclined to focus on making it exactly the same as much as possible as the author had it. Whereas an article about, like for the museum, I wouldn't worry as much at all.
Oh, that's true. And so your group, French young adults, are they educated readers or are they the young adults? Who was your target audience when you were translating for French?
We were translating for educated readers.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
so
cool.
Given that it's a 19th century text, so it uses some archaic language. We were of the opinion that we should keep archaic language. So if there was a choice of words and one was more eloquent, albeit less used today, we would still go for that word, rather than make it super simplified.
Oh, that was interesting, because I was going to ask you about that, because I'm also doing educated readers, but there are some words, like for example, translating to yards, this is like really old archaic word, like ma, and then like I used like my other two members, they're native Chinese speakers, so I use them as like a jumping base, and they're like, that is so weird, like I've never read that anywhere, and then so we actually chose to translate it to meters, where like 1 yard equals 1.0 something 7 meters. So, but would you?
Other way around, yes.
Oh, the other way. Oh, my bad. But yeah, that's kind of like what we did. But I guess you would, use the really old archaic term, or did you at any point choose some sort of a little bit? Because there's a point where it's too archaic.
Yeah, well, the yards one's a good question, because it's an imperial measurement. Like a British imperial measurement. Ooh. And not every people in history has the same measurements. Now we do. Now the metric system is almost worldwide. Yeah. But before the metric system, there was loads and loads of different ways of measuring things, like weights and volumes and distances and, you know, you name it. So the French didn't actually have what a yard was. They had different measurements. The yard is an English measurement. It's 3 feet, and each foot's 12 inches, and so on. So we were fortunate there, because it's still used in the United States. They still use the imperial measurements, So a yard for them is like everyday talk. It's
Yeah.
just still 3 feet. And Canada, which is right on the border of the United States, happens to have a French province,
Yeah.
which is Quebec. And Quebec's a really unique case because they're French speaking, but because they're surrounded by English speakers,
Yeah.
instead of just using an English word like we would in France,
Yeah.
which is, it's cool because you use an
Yeah.
English word, the Quebecers, they will refuse to use the English word because they're surrounded by, they don't want to be invaded by the English language,
Yeah.
So they'll be like real sticklers for like, no, we're going to find the, correct French word for that
Yeah.
particular thing. And they're really, really good at that. So we were able to just use the Quebec French
Oh,
word for yard.
That's so
And so,
good.
yeah, we kind of lucked out for that one.
Yeah, that's so convenient.
Yeah.
Because my group, we were discussing if we should go, add like a few words in front of it, be like around like 10 meters, or if we should just go 10 meters, but yeah, it's been a bit of pain
Yeah.
to sort of double down on
Yeah,
that.
it's not easy. But then it goes back to what you're saying. Do you want to specifically define, 9.01
Yeah.
meters or whatever it is, or
Yeah.
you just want to say it's roughly
10 meters or something.
right?
Yeah, okay, that's quite interesting. Yeah, and just wondering, so are the students that you're teaching, are they like Australian students learning French, or is it like French native speakers, or what kind of cohort do you have?
They're all Australian students learning French. Yeah.
Ooh, okay, that's interesting. So, wow, there's so much traffic, not traffic, but vehicles.
So many tractors.
Yeah, there's like been like, a couple.
It's got to be at
running
least
there.
the fourth one I've seen.
Yeah, but I guess what kind of, has there been any sort of like, I guess there wouldn't be like any sort of culture shock for you because you've grown up here, but are there any sort of, I guess, differences when you work with other cultures in general that you might like to talk about? Maybe when you're working in Italy, was there any, I guess, one is like the sort of power distance thing and, I don't know, late to meetings or not, or, sense of time. Did you have any interesting cross-culture?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from a personal standpoint. But yeah, there's definitely huge differences in sort of like the idea of professionality between even just English and Australian, let's say, and French cultures. For example, in the French culture, with all your colleagues, you have to use a really formal form of address.
Oh.
Even if you're kind of friends or whatever outside of work, you still have to, like, there's quite a strict hierarchy, unless you're in this like cool, hip, new age company or like tech company or something like that. Generally, yeah, you have to use vous with your colleagues, and especially like the boss and everything. Here, there's still hierarchy, of course, but it's a lot more relaxed in comparison, I think. It was fun in Italy with the museum because they would, Italy and France are both very food oriented. So, going on a break for lunch is super important. You can't just, have a sandwich at your desk. It's like, it's like a sin to do that. So, I'd be some days I'd be like trying to finish something because, you get to like a point in your work and you go, oh, I'll just finish this like paragraph or whatever. And then, I'd have the director come in and be like, oh, what are you doing? It's 1 o'clock. Like, let's go. We got to eat. I was like, yeah, I'll just finish. And he's like, no. It's 1 o'clock and don't worry about work. Like, that's not important. We have to go and eat. And so we'd go down to the restaurant or cafe or whatever, and it'd be like pasta, wine, for like 2 hours. And then you'd come back at 3 o'clock and you're like, all right, now you can
work
hard. Now you can work. Yeah, but yeah, don't
skip lunch.
Don't work while you're supposed to have lunch. Whereas here, the boss would be like, oh, yeah, no worries, like finish your, have a sandwich at your desk. And it wouldn't even be a thing. And
that's so cool.
It's funny.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
We should do more of that. Is that because, like, I don't know, lunch is considered like a bonding time in Italy and France, or?
Yeah, just food in general is just super important. Like I always joke that my grandma, when we eat, she'll literally be serving you lunch, right?
Yeah.
And as she's serving you the lunch, she'll be like, what do you want to eat tonight? You're like, Grandma, like I haven't even started my lunch. Like, let's...
Yeah.
and she, that's, you know, and then the same at dinner. She'll be serving you dinner. Like, what do you want to have for lunch tomorrow? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's super important. Yeah, it's everything. It's family. It's it's sacred. The table is sacred.
Yeah. Damn, that's so cool. Yeah, because I know, some workplaces, like, it's not even necessarily a thing to eat together, but I love how, you know, at this one time, everyone's gonna relax and sort of, like, be together. Okay, that's interesting. And also just wondering, like, has there ever been any sort of issue in terms of the code of ethics? Like, you know, there's like stuff about, like, you know, keeping, like, what was it, like, professional relationships, professional development, impartiality, accuracy, that kind of thing. Has there been any
in translation,
sort of,
you mean?
Yeah, in translation, but also, like, I guess in the workplace, I guess. If there's any sort of thing that you can think of, or nah, not really.
I don't know. I'd like to think I'm, you know, I have a personal, like, high benchmark of integrity, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, I'd like to think that. So, yeah, I've never been, fortunately, not yet, I have never been in a situation where I've had, like, a conflict of interest or I've had to, like, you know, ask myself what to do. There's been times when you have to escalate things, obviously, like, you know, people complain or there's some sort of problem, and you have to go and get someone that's more qualified. But no, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've really doubted, you know, that moment, and there's been an ethical you know,
that's
problem
good then.
or for now, and touch wood, you know.
No wood, sorry. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so I guess, you know, if someone, they want to pick up French, do you have any sort of, like, tips for them per se?
Start now.
And
it's
how
never
do you
too
go
late
about
to
it?
start. Look, I think classes are always a good idea.
Yeah.
Obviously, people learn in different ways. Some people are really good listeners. Some people need to see everything written down.
Yeah.
Some people just need to talk. So, you've got to find your way to your learning style, and you've got to start though. It's never too late to start. People always say, "Oh, I'd love to do that one day. I don't know, or maybe it's too late." But it's never too late. It's never too late to start, and the earlier you start, or the sooner you start, rather, the more proficient you'll be. You know, sooner, if that makes sense. So, personally, from a personal point of view, I'm I've got like a logical based thinking style. So I need structure. I need to see things written down. I need to understand why the grammar is the way it is. For some people, that's not important at all, and they can just learn vocabulary and just go, and they can start talking. So personally, for example, learning Italian, before I started classes, I had a lot of vocabulary, but I didn't know how to structure my sentences. I couldn't really, like, get it out, and so for me, classes were really important. So, I mean, if that's you will probably benefit from classes. Otherwise, you benefit from conversation. But either way, you benefit from just starting and talking and using it meaningfully, using the language for, like, everyday situations.
And do you have any, like, I don't know, you know, top Fave French resources for those beginners or, like, more?
There's loads on, like, YouTube is a wealth of knowledge. It's really good, and the advantage with YouTube is there's so much there. There's all levels, and you can kind of find people that you not relate to necessarily, but, like, kind of speak to you, mind the pun. But, you know, like, sometimes, you know, there'll be, for example, an older person who's really grammar-minded, and they'll sort of walk you through rules, and that'll really speak to some people. Or other times you'll get this sort of young person who just wants to have that kind of chatty conversation style, and that'll speak to other people, or a combination of both. But the advantage of something like YouTube is that there's just so much out there, and you can watch a couple of videos and go, okay, I like that, and learn from that, and then, and I'd say again, it's my preference, but I would say get a book. Get a beginner's book, and you can work through it sort of systematically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty good advice.
As long as the book's got, and I will say this, as long as the book's got things about everyday life. So a good thing to look for, I think, in the first chapters, if you're really starting out, you want to be looking for things of like, what do you want to do with that language? So if you go to France, what's the very first thing you want to do? You want to say, yes, please, thank you, hello, right? Once you get over that, what are you going to do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to like buy a train ticket, buy a croissant, buy a something. So if you see a book that's, it starts with greetings, and you move through that and it's got like shopping, right? That's good because that's what you're going to use.
Yeah.
If it starts thinking about things like, weird subjects,
niche politics.
Yeah, you don't. You need to find books that have topics to talk about, that you're learning the language through those topics that are meaningful for you. So shopping's a really great one. I always go back to shopping because when you go somewhere, that's the first thing you do is you buy a coffee, you buy a train ticket, and you need to know. So that's how you learn the numbers. Because everything costs something, right?
Yeah.
So you can learn numbers through that. You can learn greetings through that. Thank you. Here. Have a nice day. See you later. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
TBLT stuff.
Yeah. And then a final question is, how do you feel about being on this podcast? What was the experience like?
It's been great. I'm sorry for all the noise, guys. That was my fault. I thought we had a room.
You didn't book it. When you said, I
didn't.
think this room, I was like, ooh, fingers crossed.
Yeah, rookie error. Rookie error. But it's so nice today. We've got a beautiful spring day here, so it's been nice to be out on the balcony. The podcast has been great. I've been a little bit maybe talkative, a bit nervous.
It's good. It's good. The more info, the better, right?
Yeah, so sorry if I rattle on a bit too much. But
I bet they love it already. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for being on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Bye.
Bye, guys.